Hello everyone, this is Professor Hill, and this is a short video for our class, Introduction to Ethics, Philosophy 2306, here at St. Philip's College. This is the online version. We're doing a very concentrated Maymester class, and so we're trying to get a lot of ground covered in a short period of time. Well, today's Thursday, May the 17th, 2018. We're in week number 1 of our class. We finished the first assignment last night, the first discussion, where I wanted you to go in, make a contribution to that discussion, and then also comment on the contributions of 2 of your classmates. I'm going through those today, and they look pretty good. The main thing is we're going to make sure that we give a comprehensive, good, full response, not something quick. A couple sentences isn't going to do it. You got to think about these things. And also think about what we're doing, which is we're taking the concepts from our textbook, Doing Ethics by Lewis Vaughn, and we're bringing them in and applying them to the case study. In last night's case, it was about Jenny Lake. Again, a sad and tragic story, but a real story. And something these are decisions. These are ethical decisions that people face. And they're extraordinarily difficult and painful, and a lot of times, like the case with Jenny Lake, it just wasn't going to end well. But these are things we really have to do, and we got to sort out why we're making the decisions we are. What's our ethical decision-making process? If we have that sorted out ahead of time, at least if we spend some time using critical thinking to examine our own morals, our beliefs about good and bad, right and wrong, before we're in those situations, it'll be a lot easier to think through these things, weigh and balance the outcomes, think about our values and beliefs and principles, and then make a choice. Now, like I said, it's Thursday the 17th. We're now looking to Chapter 2 into our next case study, which is going to be due Sunday night. I wanted today to do a couple things. I wanted to make a few comments about the very end of Chapter 1 and then launch us into Chapter 2 with kind of a word of warning about it. But let's finish 2. We had gone through talking about the different types of ethics. We looked at the elements of ethics or an ethical system. The last part of Chapter 1 has to do with the relationship between religion and morality. And you'll see he ends up talking about divine command theory and some other concepts. But the main thing is this. When you think about your values and beliefs, what you think is good and bad, right and wrong, morality, that's been shaped over the course of your life by a lot of important factors. Not least of which is family, number 1. And let me give you an example. Right now I've got a 12-year-old son, and I spend a lot of my time talking to him about what's good and bad, right and wrong. I'm trying to be a positive influence. I'm going out of my way to explicitly inculcate a certain set of values in my son. I think certain things are important. I want to pass that along to him. I think some things are good and bad. I want to tell him that. I'm intentionally trying to shape him. And I know that I need to be doing this because in the absence of my wife and I, our family doing this, there's lots of other forces that are out there. And lots of times I disagree with the messages they're sending. So, I'm kind of on offense. That's the best defense, right? I'm trying to get in there and engage him and talk about not only what I believe and think is important, but also about these other things. So family's going to have a big role to play in terms of shaping an individual's beliefs, their morality. But it's not just family. Obviously, I mentioned there's lots of other factors. And again, some of these are good and some of these are bad. Right away, again, you're talking about school, teachers, classmates. These are big influences on somebody. The choice that my wife and I made in terms of a school for our son, we had that as one of the major deciding factors. We want a great education. We also wanted to be in a community where he's got good role models, where people are going to both challenge him and support him in terms of making ethical decisions. Because once you start making those as a young person, they really can shape you. And that's an important environmental concern. So families, schools, and again, once you get there, especially, I mean, think about your own experience. Was there a parental influence? Was it not somebody your parent? Maybe it was a grandma or an uncle. Outside of the family, was it a teacher? Was it a coach? Was it somebody, again, now as we talk about these different communities, think of these as kind of concentric circles. Another very important one for many people is their faith community, right? Their religious tradition, the priest, the rabbi, the person who's going to have a leading role, the pastor, in terms of talking about and shaping specifically about moral issues. Now, there's going to be lots of other people, and certainly friends just play a huge role in this. People you can talk to and bounce ideas off of and use as a sounding board and think your way through with their hopefully sound, prudent advice. But again, especially for young people who are growing up, a lot of times that looks like parents, teachers, coaches, and again, right in that mix, religious figures, pastors, priests, rabbis, others. And that's because especially in our society and in many societies around the world, religion plays an important part. It's a big part of our culture, our society, and it specifically has a component of it which is dealing with morality, good and bad, right and wrong. Lots of religious traditions have sacred texts which explicitly talk about the behavior of human beings. What's good, what's bad, what's acceptable, what's not, and why. Now, that's where our chapter kind of veers into the divine command theory. And you see, both for theists and non-theists, there's some problems with that particular theory. But it's inescapable that for some people, it plays a very important role in terms of their development and formation as a responsible, autonomous adult. That's a process, and it's going to have lots of factors along the way, some good, some bad. But religion and that relationship between religion and the formation of morality in individuals is an important one. That's addressed at the end of chapter 1 in our textbook, Doing Ethics by Lewis Vaughn. I can tell you, when we switch to chapter 2 and we start to look at some of the concepts introduced there, I want you to pay attention to something. The chapter itself is called Subjectivism, Relativism, and Emotivism. So you would be, you'd like to think, it's not a leap to think that in that chapter, he's going to talk about those three things: subjectivism, relativism, and emotivism. And he does. But I want you to notice something. Right on the first page, he says, in this chapter, I'm going to talk about 4 things. And I went, oh, okay, that's funny because the chapter title only lists 3. But then he talks about them. He says, I'm going to talk about cultural relativism. I'm going to talk about subjective relativism. I'm going to talk about emotivism. And I'm going to talk about objectivism. These 4 things. And I went, okay, got it, 4 things. In fact, he even has a little quick review box there. Quick review box. The 4 key concepts of this chapter, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then guess what happens? You start reading the chapter. And, oh, look, here's a big thing about subjective relativism. Okay. Here's the second part. Oh, big thing about cultural relativism. Really doesn't like that one. 6, 7 pages about how he doesn't like it. And then emotivism. And then we're done. And you might, you're forgiven to think, wait a minute, now hold on a minute. What happened to objectivism? We said at the beginning, page 1, that was going to be a big thing. There's no section on it. In fact, it's only mentioned once. There's one sentence right between the section on cultural relativism and emotivism. There's literally one sentence. You should look it up. And it basically just says this, which is that really only one thing is going to reflect our lived moral experience, and that's some form of objectivism is true. Those are the words he uses. And it's like, wow, okay. So again, he says it's going to be about four things. He talks about three of them and basically just spends the chapter tearing down all three. And then the one thing he says about objectivism is, oh yeah, that's the right one. Doesn't even give you any pros and cons, doesn't go into what it is. He just says that's the right one. He defines it at the beginning. I do a little quick review box, but that's it. Now, here's my thing. Read the chapter. Look at what he's saying. But I wanted to put you on warning a little bit about this because you got to remember, in this chapter, he's not just describing these four moral theories and saying, let me lay them out for you like a teacher would. He's selling one. He's selling objectivism. He says, that's the one that's right, and these other three are wrong. So the whole chapter is him tearing down these other three. In fact, even look at that little quick review box. You'll see that he defines objectivism, and then for the next three, he defines them, and then even in that little box, the review box, he says, what's wrong with it? He says he has this little thing called implications. The implications are, which is why this won't work. And then he does that for three of the four, as if for objectivisms, there aren't any implications from that. It's just, that's the one that's true. Listen, we're going to have a chat about what's good and bad about the three things he actually discusses in this chapter: subjectivism, relativism, emotivism. And then we're also going to do the same thing for objectivism. We're not just going to accept at face value with one sentence that that's the right one. We'll have a conversation. In fact, tomorrow I'll do a little bit more about each one of these four, and I'm going to address objectivism even if he doesn't want to. So we'll do that for him. I just wanted to point out that he says this at the beginning and then doesn't do it. So as you read that chapter, keep that in the back of your mind. He makes some good points about the things he's talking about, but we'll circle back and also give an examination, a critical examination to objectivism, which he passes on in this chapter. So anyway, get in there, read chapter 2, and as you're thinking about it and you're reading chapter 2, keep an eye on Sunday and on the next case study, which will be due midnight at Sunday. Okay, that's the message for the day. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.